Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Trail Network podcast. I am particularly excited to have wonderful friends of mine as guests today. I have Hellah Sidibe and Scott Jurek on the podcast. So welcome, guys, and thank you for taking the time to be part of our little podcast. So good to have you.
Thank you for having us.
It's great to be here. Hello, everyone.
Yeah. Where are you both right now?
I'm in New Jersey, East Coast.
Yeah.
And I'm home in Boulder, Colorado, where we just got
Nice.
snow this last weekend, but now we're 59 degrees and sunny and warm again.
The classic whiplash, right? It could be like 10 feet of snow one day and then back to sunshine.
Exactly.
Well, it's great to see you guys. I know we got to catch up a little bit at Javelina Jundred a couple weeks ago, but more on that later. I always feel like when you see people at running events, it's sort of like ships in the night. It's like you always think you're going to have all this time to catch
But
up.
you don't.
No, you don't. It's like, hi, oh my God, like I'll see you
I'll
later.
talk to you
And then-
later.
yeah, totally. But it was really fun to see you guys, and I'm excited to chat more about your race. Hellah.
Yes.
I did think that I wanted to start with just a little kind of overview. I know most of our listeners are probably familiar with both of you guys for different reasons. You guys have kind of had two ends of the ultra running experience, maybe, or careers, and I'm interested in how that's overlapped. But thought I'd start with just a little bit of in your own words, like how you got into trail running. What drew you to the sport in the first place, and what was sort of that compelling thing that made you think, like, long distances in painful conditions sound like a fun idea? Scott, do you want to kick us off, since your journey with
He's the
ultra running
ultra
started
legend.
a little bit ago? Yes, the original legend.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, a lot of people may be aware of like where I started, just based on if you've read Eat and Run, my book, or Born to Run even. So the story might be out there more, but in a nutshell, I was a reluctant runner. I was somebody who only ran to stay in shape for cross-country skiing, which I got into in high school. But, running was not something anybody in my family or anybody remotely did in northern Minnesota. I'm from the sticks outside of Duluth, and running, you just didn't really see a lot of people running in general. And in like middle school, we had these like cross-country races, and we would do like every year they'd have like a regional kind of meet where, they'd send a couple of 4th and 5th and 6th graders to this meet and race. And I remember even placing second place at those and still being like, cross-country coach wanted me to come out for running and never wanted to. I just thought running was boring, and it just sounded like something you do for punishment. And, I played soccer,
You're not wrong.
basketball, and all these sports. And we ran laps for punishment. And it was just never something that really hit me. I dabbled in a couple of like 1 mile races as a kid, but it wasn't until I got into cross-country skiing and a ski coach said, hey, you've got to get ready for the season. And I couldn't afford roller skis or a bike. So it was running for me. And that's what I did to stay in shape over the summer. And I did it. But again, it didn't really grab hold. And then it was getting on the trails for long outings with ski poles for dry land training that just kind of captured like this passion of mine, like, oh, running out on trails in the woods. And I grew up hunting and fishing. So this was more like my turf. And that's where I really kind of like fell in love with it. And really it wasn't until college where I'm like, okay, I'm going to give this running thing a shot, or I'm going to like be more accepting of it or embrace it a little bit more instead of just like shoving it off like, running, can't stand it.
Like it's this training thing that you have to do, a means to an end, right?
Yeah. So there's hope for everybody. Like even if you hate running still, like late in life, it's out there for you.
That's funny. I just like when you were talking about the roller skiing, I just had like the funniest image. Like I have to say that's got to be one of the most ridiculous looking sports.
I mean, it's also like it's hardcore. Like you hit the deck.
It looks like it. I believe it, but it looks ridiculous.
You hit the deck, it's like falling on snow. Like if you fall on roller skis at 30 miles an hour, like
You're in trouble.
Yeah. So, but it's the best thing to simulate cross country skiing for sure. But
totally. But trail running looks way cooler, right? So that's ultimately why you switched. I mean, I definitely relate on the skiing side to that, because growing up in, Canada, I feel like there's just seasons where you can't run on the trails, right? And it was probably like that for you in Duluth. Like you just can't run all year. So you have to find other sports to keep you sane. And skiing is an amazing workout. So Yeah, I'm always excited when I can put my running shoes away for a little bit. And I guess you just kind of looking at some of the big races that you've tackled, or some of them are the same as ones that you've done as well, Hellah. I know like Western States and Leadville. And again, those races have changed so much in the last 10, 15, 20 years, which is kind of crazy to see that progression in the sport. Scott, do you feel like you look at your experiences with some of these races and then you look at, say, Hellah's experience with some of these races and you see, like, are you able to kind of recognize the same race? Does it feel like the sport has changed a ton in that time?
I mean, I guess because I've been around the sport for so long, and it's not like I've left and then come back and like, whoa, it's so different. There's some races where I hadn't been to, like, say 5 to 8 years or something like that, but I've never had like these long gaps. So the transition or the changes have been slowly occurring, I feel like. I mean, some people are like, oh, the sport's totally changed, or oh, it's not like what it used to be. It's getting so big. And yeah, races are harder to get into. But because in trail races and trail ultras, because there's caps and restrictions on permits and opening up races to a large number of people, to me, it's like, yeah, there might be a few more people out there, or it's harder to get into races, but there's more events, which is great. So people have more opportunities closer to them instead of having to travel. But I think at the core, sure, there's some changes here and there, but at the core, the sport is the same. And I don't know, I'll be one of those older senior, I guess veterans that just like, oh, like is more like, okay, yes, the sport is changing a little bit, but I'm not going to be like, oh, it's so different, I don't like it now, or oh, it used to be way better before. I do like to think that I lived or was competing during the golden age of ultra running before social media.
You were, yes.
Some of those things, and just, yeah, even the internet, like it was cool, and it was just really, the way we met people, nobody really called each other. The way we, I guess, ran into folks and saw folks was going to a race, 3 months later, and another, 6 months we'd see them again. And so things like that, where that part was just more, it was just more down home, instead of being like, oh yeah, everybody knows what's happening around the world and around the circuit and around the races. Before, you actually had to show up at the race, and you hung out with people after the race, you talked to them, you caught up, you had a beer after. Those elements, I think, are maybe not as common, but a race like Javelina brings back some of the older, like you hang out with people more, and it's got more of a festival approach to it.
It totally does. And it's interesting you say that. I hadn't really thought about, I still think of trail races as this huge community piece, but then again, I often go to them. Like, you can go to UTMB and everybody's in town, but you don't see anybody, like it's such a kind of fast pace. And so you feel like you are sort of like, you see it play out online, but you don't get that experience in real life. But people that are online, I feel like they look at it and they go, wow, all these people are just like hanging out here together. Like, it's sort of a weird kind of contrast that the internet has brought in. I remember just like trolling through blogs. That was sort of how you it was the equivalent of the social media post, right? Like I'd read Anton's blogs, or I'd read, like you're just trying to get all this information and these little tidbits. And I do miss kind of that long form part of it.
Yeah.
But
I love Ultrarunning magazine came out once a month. And that's how you read about it. It's like,
you got all your race results. I would read everybody's names. You kind of felt like they were old friends, just kind of like going through those lists back when the races were short enough that you could fit like all the finishers' names, on a page or whatever. And yeah, those parts of the sport, I feel like some of them have evolved and changed for better or worse. But yeah, I love your perspective. I feel like it is important just to appreciate what running offers now and what races offer now, and not kind of focus on what maybe has been lost along the way as much. Because I do think that it's still amazing. And yeah, Javelina has incredible community. I actually think that's something they do really well there.
Yeah, well,
I agree.
You put everyone in this little horseshoe.
He's like, I don't even know. We're talking about old stuff that probably he's never been exposed to. But remind me, I have this story about running into Rob McNair, an old buddy of mine. I hadn't seen him in like 15 years, but I saw him at Javelina, so you'll have to remind me.
Oh, nice.
That. So yeah, but yeah, Hellah's got his own perspective. Yeah. He's like fairly new to this thing.
Yeah, starting when, Hellah? When did you dip your toes into, well, first of all, running, because that's a huge part of your life story, and it's changed your life in a lot of ways. But yeah, walk us through that transition in your life.
Yeah, so 7.5 years ago, I just wanted to run, just to try
like
10
Forrest
minutes
Gump.
a day. Yeah, just 10 minutes a day, 2 weeks ago. It was just like, let me see what this is all about. But it wasn't that, I also have to be transparent to people. It wasn't that I've never ran, didn't know how to run. I did. It was just a different style of running. But also, I didn't like when I'm running without having to do something with soccer, or doing something like it's dedicated for something specific where you're not just focusing on running. So there was two big goals for me. I hated my life. I wanted to change that. And also, I was thinking to myself, hey, you love the way how fit you are when you're in soccer season, but in order to be fit, you got to run, but you hate running. And how are you going to be fit the way you want to get fit? I know you can lift, you can do all this stuff, but the kind of body shape I wanted takes the kind of running we're doing in soccer. But also the kind of running we're doing in soccer was a lot of punishment run. So it was one of those things where I just said, you know what, let me just give it 10 minutes only, because I know that's not a lot of time. It's not that I couldn't do more, but I know that's something that I can mentally cope with. And then I could be like, okay, 10 minutes done, and wait till tomorrow. So fell in love with it within 2 weeks, and I just kept going. And I ran to Lex, my fiance. I said, I don't think I can ever stop this. I can see myself doing this for the rest of my life, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let me try every day for a year. And I had zero idea. This is how new I am to running, and still am, I think. I didn't know what a shrieking was. I'd never heard of shrieking. I just thought I was the one just getting out there every day, until I started hearing, oh, he's a run streaker. Oh, yeah, I guess I'm shrieking every day. For me, it was just getting out there, just trying to explore this sport. And the more I was doing it, the more I was like, oh, I feel good. I feel invincible. I can do harder and more. But in 2020, during the pandemic, I got more time to run, because I love that there was nothing. It was like empty streets, and I would be in the middle of the road, main road, no one's there, just having a good time. And I felt like I literally owned the town, because no one would be outside. So we didn't have like a lockdown where you're not allowed to be outside. You just couldn't go to anywhere. So most people were inside because all the stores, everything was shut down. And I was like looking on stuff, and I said, let me look at trails that I want to run. I had a friend that was younger than me, and he said, yeah, there's a local trail this part of the park. I said, well, I live next to it. We went on a little run. It's literally 2.5 miles up and back. And I took my GoPro with me. And after watching the footage, all I could keep saying is, this is so fun. So on the YouTube video, we started doing a count. Every time I said, this is so fun, it was like 30 times in one video, like 20 or 15-minute video. All I keep saying, this is so fun. This is so fun. Because I felt like a kid. I would trip, and I'll catch myself before I fall. And I would see something, I'll hop over it. And I would try to just agility, just moving my leg. It felt like I was doing a ladder movement, but I was so occupied. And I was like, I see why people are into this. And fast forward to 2021, I started my run across America. So that was the first time I was forced. I had no choice but to run on trails with road shoes too. I'm going through Arizona, northern Arizona. I was finding myself in a lot of roads where just dirt, mud, like the kind of trail terrain that you would find on races. So I just started saying, this is interesting. It's kind of tough because I have the wrong shoes on. But at the same time, it makes me so focused on the running because I do not want to fall. I'm not just going through the motion to get from point A to point B. I have to really focus. So, and I had known Scott way before then because I had the book North and had yet to read it. I just had it because a friend of mine who was a big fan said, hey, yeah, if you want to run across America, you heard of this guy that did the Appalachian Trail, had the record. And so as I'm running, I was listening to Born to Run because a lot of my audience member was talking about, you got to listen to this book. Scott name comes back up again in that book. And they're talking about Leadville. And I was like, I want to know what this race is. I get to my RV, had internet, Google Leadville 100. And I remember in Born to Run, it said, if you think you're the ultra runner, you want to test yourself, this is a race to go to. And I know having to experience it, I don't think it's the hardest race in the world because I've experienced other things that I think personally that's harder. But the fact that the way it's like at a mile above sea level, it has this climb and altitude, it can be difficult depending on the person going out there. And that's when I was like, I want to run Leadville. It just hit me. And it's one of those things, I don't go look for stuff. It finds me, I believe, because if I didn't listen to Born to Run, I would not care about Leadville. If I didn't come out of the shower one day feeling like, hey, you need to run across America, it wasn't like I was looking for it. So that's when I got introduced to the whole trail scene. So I think I'm still a newbie because I've had 3 trail races, which are all the 300-mile races I've done. And I barely go on the trail until I have to train for those. But so I don't know if I necessarily call myself an ultra trail runner, but it is in my DNA, I guess.
I would say after 3 iconic 100-milers, Hellah, that you can call yourself an ultra trail runner.
Yeah.
I love that. I just had the biggest smile on my face when you were talking about that, like joy and the playfulness that you feel when you trail run. Cause I do feel like that is sort of a turning point, right? If you can access that. Cause like listening to both of you guys talk about your like getting into running, it was kind of funny because you're both like, cause I have to, cause you know, like there's that sort of like, it's hard and it can feel like such a grind. But then once you unlock that piece where you have like the fun and you feel like a kid, I feel like all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can reframe this. Like it doesn't have to be this thing where I'm just kind of slogging through my run. And then when you get to go to these places where you're just like, you're on the Appalachian Trail or you're running across America and the terrain is changing, like you just sort of go, my feet are taking me here, you know, like what a cool experience.
One of the day that I went out to train with Scott, we went to this area where Scott, I don't know what the mountain area was called, but we stopped a lot to take some cool shot. But like the whole time, like, holy cow, Scott, this exists here. And then you keep going on these things. He was every time you go into a section, it feels like you're in a different part of the country. And then we got to this top where like it's super flat, like a table, but you see this beautiful mountain view to your right as we're going. And the whole time, that was one of the time where like, we were going up and down, but we just ended up just having a lot of fun. You just like, wow, I want to be out there all day. It felt like that. It's one of those feelings where it's hard to explain until you put yourself out there.
Such a gift, isn't it? Like you have those moments and you realize that if you weren't out there running and pushing yourself and putting yourself in this position, you'd probably never get this experience.
I would never see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You would do your whole life and die. And it's kind of like, dang, I'm glad I went out there to at least see that, even if it's once.
Yeah. I really feel that. It's such a privilege and it's such a huge part of trail running. And it's cool you're talking about Leadville and the Born to Run effect. Scott, I know you've gotten this from everybody, but it definitely was one of the books that, you know, inspired me to get out there. And you get to, when you go to a race like Leadville and you sort of get to put yourself in the place where you imagined, you know, when you're reading the book and have that experience, it's a cool race for that. Like I actually went out for the first time a couple years ago and I was filming a guy who his time goal was like 29:30, which I was like, oh my gosh, if that's your time goal, we're cutting it like right down to the wire. And he finished like 9 minutes before the cutoff. So it was a close race. But I felt like I got to see a lot of people running it and it was their first 100-miler and they'd never done anything like that. And it's sort of a unique race for that. I feel like Western States, you have to have qualifiers, UTMB, you have to have qualifiers. Like it just makes you more experienced by definition. But Leadville is sort of this amazing, like, open season, you know, where you can just, if you feel like you can do it, you can go do it.
You can go do it.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of that race, even though I know some folks who don't like the aspect that, oh, anybody can just go and do it. But I welcome that. And I think it's super cool because it's one of the old classic races, even though it doesn't maybe have as much prestige in some ways, or it's not as hard in some ways. It's just, it's been around forever. And the fact that you can literally have run a 5K and run Leadville. So hopefully that doesn't change, but it's very unique in that regard. I mean, even smaller races around the country that have, you know, even a short history have decided, oh, we're going to have qualifications. So it's super cool. And, you know, there's a lot of road. I think that's the beauty too, is I think my trail running has helped me enjoy the road running that I do. And it just made me appreciate any kind of movement. So I know folks that are listening to this are like, oh yeah, I don't live in a place. I mean, Hellah lives in Jersey, and like taking him when he came out older, like, I mean, sometimes I run on roads here because, you know, like sometimes too much of a good thing, like having great trails out the door can just, you can kind of be lulled into this complacency of like, oh, everything's beautiful around you. Oh, everything's great. But I can enjoy myself on a boring ass like paved road somewhere. Like I think that's having that appreciation for running, no matter what the setting is, comes. And I think, it's great to be inspired by hitting the trails that are gorgeous, but you can get it anywhere. I think that's the beauty of running.
The way you said that it's like the opposite for me, because I'm like all road, but like when I get to the trail, I'm like, holy cow. It gives it that sweet spot because what you're doing, it's not that I don't enjoy the road. It's absolutely my favorite. One of my favorite things to do is being out there. But you realize when you go to something else that's a little bit different and you're like, oh, this is cool because it's just different. That's all it is.
Yeah, I was kind of going to touch on this a little later, but I think it's interesting for you, Hellah, like because you only have road access, like trying to keep up the motivation to train for like a specific race. like Javelina requires a lot more effort on your part than if you were just to keep your run streak going in your neighborhood, right?
Yes.
Like, do you feel like that's a conscious choice you make? Like, I'm going to throw this 100-miler on trails into my training, even though you're running every single day and that's hard enough to keep up, you know?
Yeah, I think that's the thing for me. Even when I was training with this, I was getting a lot of advice from Scott. He realized like you have to go to places to get on the trail. He said even if it's once a week, make that sacrifice, drive out there. He's talking about the Delaware Gap that's like not far from me. Get in the car for an hour and a half, or if you need to. But also if you can't go every day, but let's go slower, longer, and find a rolling hill so you can find a way to make it happen, even if it's not the way that you want, even though you want the more trail time on your leg. But for example, because the fact that I wasn't doing that, so it was smart for me to go to Boulder, somewhere where I can be on a trail for even if it's 3, 4, 5 days at a time. But not everybody has the privilege and the ability to do what I did. I just flew out across the country to do that. But it could be tough. So it's one of those things, just like make what you have with it. And once you get out there to the race, you're going to see where you suffer and you really know, wow, if I really want to take this serious, I need to make sure that I'm doing the things that I need to do, even though I may not have all that near me. So it all depends. But in terms of ultra, I've really learned on the trail that I got to get more on the trail. That's all it is. The running leg, I have it. It hasn't been an issue. And I've noticed that the last 200 miles that I've done. But at the same time, it doesn't matter how long I can run. But the kind of terrain that you're on is going to test different muscle groups, even ankle joints. You can just feel it. So that could be the turning point for you if you can kind of get that down at the same time.
Yeah, it beats you up. I just had this flashback when you were saying that, Hellah, to when we got out for a little run up in Chamonix and we ran up to La Flégère and then back down. Yeah. And I remember thinking like, my God, this guy's like your soccer legs. I feel like that's definitely a skill that you bring into the trails because you can pick your feet up so fast.
I enjoyed that.
I give you a shout out to your downhill technique because it was on point.
I love downhill. That's one of the things when you say I feel like a kid. Scott knows that too. Like I struggle.
You were totally like windmill arms, like
I just love to like just let it go, and it's very risky. And I love like you're on that edge, that tipping point where you can really screw yourself over, but you have the slightest amount of time where you can brake so you don't screw yourself over. So I love living on that little edge because if you hit a rock really bad, you can launch really badly, and it could be very dangerous. But I also know I can kind of play around with that area and just let go. I really love like going down a hill. It's one of the things where like I know people your quads can get shot, and I've heard that many times, and I definitely believe that's the case. I think the fact that we've done a lot, my sport's been such a quad dominant and calf dominant, it's allowed me to have that strength to pick my feet up, a lot of ladder work, so I can see something coming quick, but I'm ready to pick my leg up. My body's ready to respond to it. It doesn't take a lot of time for me to be like, oh, I need to slow down to really navigate this. I can kind of let go a little bit. I think if I can now incorporate some of the power, like hiking, like I was behind Scott when we were training, the guy has this gear where don't mess with it because it's the same gear when we're going flat, but when we're going up, the gear does not change. So I can go flat, I can be strong, nothing. I can be even stronger going downhill. But when it comes to uphill now, the gear changes dramatically for me where like my muscle, my body's like, uh-oh, this is different right now. But somebody like Scott with the most experience in the world, his gear is like he trained his body where like that's an incline, no problem. The same gear, he'll attack it the same way. So as much as the downhill is my thing, if I can get stronger with that same kind of skill, I think I would have a lot more success than in terms of time off of my 100-mile races.
He's working on it. It's a work in progress. We're getting Hellah. Then he'll be unstoppable.
Scott, do you feel like your ski background plays into that? Because I know for me, like being a backcountry skier, that uphill gear is like, such a powerful thing to kind of have in your back pocket. I feel like, do you think that the kind of cross training and that aspect of it helps your uphill game?
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I think with the type of Nordic skiing I did, it was definitely aerobically, well suited for trail running. But not as much as like power. I mean, you still have to have power, and definitely like skating versus classical technique, which I did both of those. But I've only been doing it for a few years, so it wasn't like I was skiing, all my life. I mean, in northern Minnesota, some people, but I was ice fishing. We had snowmobiles occasionally when they were working and things like that. So I didn't grow up like skiing, throughout a whole season or anything. Once in a while, dabbled alpine, cross country, but I do think it helps. when it comes to like a cross training aspect. And there's no doubt the athletes that have, say, a power sport or a sport that requires more strength and agility and rapid muscle firing and reaction times. I mean, all of that stuff helps immensely. I feel like people who have sprinting backgrounds or something like soccer, like Hellah, having that background, you're better suited for trails than, say, a road runner who's only run, cross country track, than road races. Cross country is obviously more, all terrain, but a lot of the courses are pretty mellow. It's not like cross country running in the UK, for instance, or that sort of thing. But yeah, there's definitely some crossover. For me, I feel like it helped me definitely mentally to prepare for like, steep uphill climbs and, the downhill descents on the skis. Obviously, you got to be super sharp and on and, trusting in your body.
Yeah, there's no sleeping on the job when you're hurtling down the mountain.
It definitely helps. Nope. That's what I love about trail running, because you can have people who have backgrounds who you don't have to be, and especially ultras, it helps to have speed. There's no doubt. I mean, having the machinery to do certain things, but at the end of the day, you see people. I mean, Jenny, my wife, is like, back of the pack, mid pack. Like, she's always just like, gosh, I can't believe that person passed me. Like, I mean, it's all body shapes, all types of people.
But you're still doing it, and you're still finishing under the
all
time
genders,
required.
It's just, that's what's awesome. It's just, however you can get your body from point A to point B and how you do that mentally. So I think it's super cool. So you don't have to have like, oh, I've got to have all this background in a sport or a discipline. Or, I don't know. You could be like laying bricks all day and chopping wood. And, I used a lot of, and bring up Rob McNair. I hadn't seen him in a long time, but I used to race against him in Southern California. He was part of the Bad Rats, just north of San Diego in Huntington Beach. And he is an electrician, and all day long he's in crawl spaces, attics, like, working hard manually, and then would run either after work or in the morning. And I knew a lot of like just hardworking blue collar individuals who ran ultras back in the day in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And yeah, just like Gabriel Flores, who won Badwater, was just a total badass in the LA area. He worked at he had a tire shop, and he was like under, cars all day long and trucks. And Rich Fisher, a guy that I got to meet through my buddy Ian Torrance, he wasn't winning races, but he worked under basically, excavators and front end loaders, it's giant heavy equipment in 100-degree plus heat in Vegas all the time, and still got out. And
Scott, would you say that helps you too mentally and physically? Because the fact that you're doing that hard labor, so when you get to the mental part, it's like, yeah, this is hard, but like, this is what I do all day.
I chose to do this.
Yes, like, I'm like working at 100 weather degree, lifting these things. So now I don't have to lift the heavy thing on 100 weather degree. So I'm just moving my body now. That could probably help mentally, right? Yeah. I'm assuming.
And Rob's still doing it. Like Rob McNair, he's like, I'm 70, and he's like, I'm still like, he's like, I can't run great right now, but he's like, I've been contorting my body. He's had a back surgery, but like his work is physically demanding. And he's still like, he's like, I don't have retirement. I don't have, I still got to be an electrician. Like, it's my livelihood. And so I think that's super cool. Like the sport, it sometimes has shifted in terms of those people, but to me, it's like, you can come from whatever discipline. Like, I feel like nowadays people are like, oh, I don't have time, I have kids, or there's no doubt, like if you're working 2 jobs and, managing a family and all that, it is harder to find time, but we can all find time to exercise and to move our bodies. And ultra running is like a goal to keep that movement and that lifestyle going. And it's pretty cool to run into those people who are like, okay, they're not just, and I never counted myself as a professional either. We all had jobs back in the day. So it's, it's a privilege to be able to not, work certain jobs and be an athlete and do the things we do. But to everyone out there, you don't have to be somebody who just dedicates their life to running to be an ultra runner.
It's so true. And we interview a lot of people on the podcast, and some people are just professional runners and that's all they do. And that is a full-time job. And then we had Lauren Peretz on last week, and she's an OBGYN with, she's a mom. She's like got all these other things going on. And then she was still third at Javelina 100 and is like, crushing. And that's really cool. And I feel like there's sort of a, flip side with the being professional runner where you can almost overdo it. And there's sort of like, I feel like we don't talk about that enough. Like, it's great if all you have to do is run, but then the tendency is like, you just run yourself into the ground. And there's something to be said about keeping your life balance, and having those things. And that is actually something I wanted to ask both of you guys before we dive into Javelina. I feel like I could just talk to you guys all day, but I know, Hellah, for you, your fiance Lex, like, I
Yes.
love her. She's so sweet. And I know she's very involved in the behind the scenes of what you do and the stories that you tell. And you guys are like an amazing team together.
Thank
But
you.
she's not a huge runner,
No,
right?
she hates it.
Yeah.
She had a
Yeah.
run streak. She doesn't tell anybody. She did a run
Really?
streak for 640 some days. And every day she's going out, she's like, oh, I hate this. I hate this. And I'm like, you need to stop. She'd be like, I'm so far in, I can't. So like I would join her, like do a mile with her when I like later in the day, even though I have run. But one day I was like, I think you need to just stop. She's like, yeah, you're right. And then she goes, I'll never do it again. She's a yoga person. She absolutely loves yoga. She goes there a few times a week. But running, she hates it. We're the complete opposite. She's like, sometimes she asks me, how do you enjoy this? I can find joy out of this. So it's not for everybody, and that's okay.
It's not for everybody, but I do think it can be healthy to have a partner where you don't do everything together.
Yes, I like that. We're so different. There's a lot of
Yeah.
similarity in certain things. Like we have the same like morals and value for sure, 100%. And I think that's important. But like in terms of things that I like doing, complete opposite. And for her too. But the cool thing is though, sometimes like I want to see why you like this, and I want to like let me do what you do. I'm like, I see why you do it. I don't like it, but I really understand the joy you get out of it,
Yeah.
So we get to do that with each other, which is fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. I feel like that's probably for you a good piece of keeping your perspective and not having your whole life be about running, right?
Yeah. Yep. And then I love when she calls me out on certain things. Like when I'm like not doing something, she'd be like, "Did you run yet?" I'd be like, "Nope." She goes, "Just go run." I know that's what it is.
Yeah.
And 99% of the time, and I'll go out and be like, "All right, I just needed to move my body. I'm good now."
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice. Scott, Billy and I had the pleasure of skiing with you and the family last year in Aspen. And I just wanted to say I really admire like your family kind of dynamic and how you just pack the kids up and take them on the road and kind of fold them into the lifestyle that you and Jenny have. I have this like particular memory of Evergreen when we were out skiing, and he's just like hurtling down the mountain. And I think at some point he decided he was no longer going to like pizza. He was just going to go full send down the mountain. And then he just kind of lost control and he turned into this like snowball that was just like going down the mountain. And I thought for sure, we'd get down to the bottom and he'd be a mess and that'd be the end of the day. Cause he's like, 5 years old last year. And you just like picked him up, brushed the snow off, took a look at him, and you're like, you're fine, like you're good, like keep going. And I think he skied for like a couple more hours after that.
That was the man. That kid can talk.
Good.
He's like a little adult. I can have a conversation with him forever.
Your kids are the freaking coolest.
And then you ask the craziest question. I'm like, how did he think about that? And he pays attention to stuff that's happening around him too.
Yeah, both your kids are so
awesome,
curious, and just the way that you're raising them and sort of the intentionality behind like the life that you're exposing them to. I really like respect and love. And I wondered if your relationship with running has changed because of the family dynamic and sort of like how you fold all of that into spending time with the family. Because running can be something that's like fairly selfish in a way, right? Like it takes us away from the other parts of our life.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think Hilary, well, you got to see a bit because when you ski all day, you see the highs and lows.
Mostly highs.
Yeah, mostly highs, but like it's bricklaying work. Parenting is not, especially if you're involved with your kids. I mean, we have friends where they have tons of help and people are helping take care of their kids. And I don't know, I just grew up with parents who were involved because they had to. We didn't have money, and my mom, was with us and taking care of us until she got sick. And I feel like there's a resiliency component too. Like we want to model for our kids, but it is a lot of work. Like everyone looks and like sees like, oh man, you guys look like, oh, it's just, they're so awesome, but it's a ton of work. So it takes a lot of time. So I feel like sometimes like, would I have been able to race at the level I did, work a full-time job, and, be as an involved parent? Like, that gets harder and harder. So for me, because we had kids late, we've just dedicated time. And sometimes other things, they don't suffer, but you can't put as much effort. So like running for me sometimes is like, getting out for, okay, I got 45 minutes, or, because I don't have, right now I'm like tinkering with, doing some other goals. So I want to do more. So like it kind of comes in waves, and Jenny did a 100-miler this year. And so we kind of make sure like we each are going after our goals we want to go after, but it gets harder with the kids for sure, because if you want to spend time with them and you want to, model, it's like your ski day is going to look different than, or running or whatever you're doing, if you have your kids with you. And I think some parents don't maybe want to give up. Like it can be selfish. Like, no, I want to ski, or I want to run, or I don't want to do this all day to get kids, or you just stay at home and you don't do anything. And, I think for us, it's like, okay, let's bring them along and we're going to find ways to have fun. And, it's like, okay, you wake up early and do an uphill lap or two, and okay, then I'll take over. Like you do trade-offs, but then a lot of time we spend time together. And I think it's important for them to see us doing things too, because even though they're like a lot of kids, like, I don't want to ski. Like once they're out there, they're like, you can't pull them off the mountain. It's like, I don't want to go hiking. And they're like complaining.
Because they don't really know.
But it's like, this is what we're going to do. It's kind of like, I always tell them like, you're lucky you get to go skiing. Like I had to chop wood and stack wood and like, shovel and do all these things. Like we constantly had to do like chores around the house, and having a mom who was sick, we were always doing things. And it just kind of, as a kid, it sucked. It was not like, oh, I get to just be a kid all the time. So I tried to just instill like, okay, this is what we're doing. And they don't really have a choice. It's like finding joy in those things
until you move out.
You get to ski. It's like, are you hiking? And they're better for it. But I think some parents kind of just like, oh, this is so miserable. Or so like we biked around Japan. We've done 2 really long, 1-month trips in Japan, just bike packing and camping every night. And it's hard work. Like, and there are down moments, and the kids are like, I don't want to go anymore. Like it's just. But you teach them a lot, and maybe my kids won't want to do anything when they're older. But I'm hoping like they'll have these skills and experiences where they're like, oh yeah, I remember that was so cool, or that was so fun, and they may decide to do completely different things once they're older. But for right now, Jenny and I, it's like, or we just wait until they're old enough, and then we're retired, and like I'm not going to wait 20 years. I'm like I said, had kids when I was older, so I want to still be out there doing something, even if it is bricklaying work of like hauling a kid up a mountain on a bicycle in a trailer and things like that. So it's just, it's not maybe the most perfect training, but we're out there enjoying what we love to do. It's a different type.
You're making it work.
Making it work. And to all the parents out there, you just gotta, sometimes you just gotta drag them out, and you gotta get them out there. And once they're out there, they're usually happier. And there are those moments like evergreens. It's like he wants to do everything his big sister is doing, and he finds a way down. But and he's getting better. So,
well, and I love that. And I remember you saying when we were out there, like you started with these 30-minute sessions or an hour-long sessions, and you don't try to force like a whole day out of it if they're not feeling it. And I feel like that's a great way to do it. And it's nice that you guys live in Colorado where it's easier, like you don't have to worry about the access. And like, I know if you spend all day getting somewhere as a parent, you're probably like, you will ski till the end of the day.
There's a lot of that. Cause like where we have Boulder is like, we have a ski area an hour away, but if we go anywhere else, it's like 2-3 hours, and the kids like can't stand like, oh, we have to drive this far. And then you have to sit in lift lines. And that's why we'll end up doing more away from the resort. But right now it's been away for repetition. But no, it was true. Like, I'm like, we drove here, we're skiing, we have lunch on the mountain, we're like, pack lunches. Like, it's just, it was one of the things. It was great during COVID because it's like, okay, this is what we're doing. We're spending the day. And there's a lot of that. Even though we live in Colorado, it's still like a haul to get somewhere. And as a parent who's like, no, we're not just going to turn around after an hour. It's like, we're going to be here,
You will enjoy this.
We'll warm up, and we'll, have lunch. We'll take breaks, you do the sacrifices like, oh yeah, you're going to get a waffle at the Waffle House or whatever, like things where I'm just like, they don't need to.
I mean, that works for adults, right?
Like, you gotta do it. And it's like being uncomfortable is okay. And I think that's the biggest lesson we're trying to instill, that, there's a lot of great things, but I think nowadays it's so easy to be so comfortable that you never want to do anything outside of it or get out there and do. But kids need that. Adults need that. We all need that these days more and more.
So true. And it's the beauty of ultra running and sort of the curse is that it's very uncomfortable. And that's sort of what keeps us coming back, right? You learn something about yourself each time you put yourself in that place.
Thank you, Osprey, for sponsoring this episode of the show. Osprey packs are known for being durable, sustainable, and comfortable. I've been seeing a ton of Duro and Dyna trail running hydration packs on the trail, and I'm sure you have too. I also have to rave about my new favorite luggage, the Daylight Carry-On Travel Pack 44 liter. It is the biggest carry-on allowed on an airplane, and wow, have I been amazed at the amount of gear that this can carry. It's shocking. You can use it as a duffel or a backpack, which is super handy, and it has 2 stretch water bottle pockets, which I love. An open suitcase style with full zip opening. Honestly, it's the perfect travel bag for those on the go. The Daylight Carry-On Travel Pack 44 liter. Try it out at osprey.com or check on the Pack Finder link to find the perfect pack for you.
Okay, so I really want to jump into Javelina, and that's sort of what prompted this whole fun little, chance to record together, which I absolutely love. But Hellah, you ran Javelina, your third 100-miler, and I know, it was a challenging day. I was out there as well, crewing and pacing. Well, I was supposed to pace Corinne Malcolm until she got injured, but it was like record-breaking heat. There was a whole lot going on. So do you want to dive in a little bit and tell us, like, first of all, like, how did you decide on Javelina as your next 100-miler, and just sort of, walk us through how you got there.
I've heard of Javelina for a couple of years now, and I know it's a Hoka sponsored race, and I'm sponsored by Hoka, and I wanted to do Javelina eventually. I know there was like opportunity if you want to run Javelina, but my biggest thing was, well, I just did Leadville. That allowed me to have a qualifying to do the BIPOC for Western States. So I said my next 100-miler, I wanted to be Javelina, not because I think it's not a hard race, but based on those 2 races I've done, especially Western States, I think it would allow me to run more. I just like, if I can run, I know I can do really well because of the terrain. And then that also comes to where I live. I felt like Javelina, based on what I've seen with descriptions and things like that, it's more suitable for me as a road runner where I live to translate that into that course. So I wanted to do it. And the good thing was I had a little wake-up call, which was nice when I went to train with Scott. And we went on this course, and he said, "Hell, it's going to be similar to this rolling hill," which was really good because I even downplayed way more than I thought it was. So the fact that I did that when I went out there to even do the 2 days of shakeout run, I'm like, ooh, Scott was exactly on point, and I am more than ready for this because now my mentality shifted a little bit. So I didn't go in being like, oh, this is going to be like how it is home, but just with dirt and rocks and whatever you for a trail path. And I wanted to do it because I know that I should be capable to do 20 hours. And I had the legs for it. We had a strategy. Scott said, you better not do the first loop at 3:15. Because he knew Hellah's the kind of person, sometimes I go too hard too soon. So he said, if I see 3:15 Hellah, we're going to be in trouble later. Like when you have fresh leg, it's good till you don't, right?
Yeah.
And so I said, well, the goal is let's go like around 3:30, maybe sub 3:30 for the first loop, which I ended up doing in 3:23. And then second loop, ended up doing it under 6 hours. I think it was 5:50 or so. And then I was saying to the crew, let's get to 60 by 6 p.m. So if I do that, I should be good because I know I'm going to have the best person to pace at that point because he's pulled me in many training races. I know he can pull me. So 60 by 6, when we got to 60 miles, well, before the third loop really was like the heat really kicked in. It was one of those things where like I had ice all over me, but the thing is the ice would melt so quick. And then as wet you think you are, it would dry on your body so fast. So like there's no really like moisture on you. You would dump a bucket of water on you. Within 15, 20 minutes, it's already dry. That's how hot it was. And I felt like I was doing okay. I didn't feel like the heat really destroyed me. But no matter what, you're going to have some kind of effect, even if you didn't actually feel it. It's doing some kind of beating on your body because your body has to cool down. You're sweating more, whatever it is. It's trying to absorb all the calories and nutrient carbs you're trying to take in. But when we got to the 60 by 6, which was like, I think it was like, Scott, you said on the video, actually, I was looking at it the other day. You said, oh, you did good. What is it, 5:48 or 5? I was way ahead of that. And I said, okay, I'm in good hand now. I'm with Scott. And that next loop we went out, we really dialed it. It was so perfect. Scott let me take control of like the first 3 miles. He let on purpose. This guy is good. He's a good pacer. If you can get him, get him. So I knew, I realized within a mile that he's doing this on purpose. He just let me lead the first 3 miles of the first loop with him of the 40 miles. And then he said, okay, Hellah, after we cross the road, before we get to H station, I'm going to go in front of you now and I'm going to start pulling you. So he wanted me to get into a rhythm first. And then he stepped in and then we just dialed it. And when we dialed it, I mean, we dialed it. I went a little slower, like per mile pace, the third loop, toward the end of the third loop. But we picked it up, dropped my pace so quick. But it was comfortable. It wasn't something where it was too much until we got to like maybe the last aid station. Right before we got there, I was like, ooh, Scott, something is weird with my stomach. Like this is like, and I've never felt this in me. I'm always like, I never have stomach issue, and I'm very and I talk about it so much because people are like, I have stomach issue. I'm like, I can take anything, and it was a little weird. So we slowed down and we got to. This is the first time ever, Hilary, that I had to use a bathroom in both of my 100-mile races. I never have to go to the bathroom.
Really?
Never. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and then if I pee, I will pee, but like sometimes I can go like 5-6 hours without peeing. It's not that I'm not taking in liquid. I am. So this was really shocking to me. And I was like, Scott, I have to go to the bathroom.
I'm going to go see the porta potty.
Yeah. And then we waited till we got to headquarters. And that's when I went to the bathroom, which took a little bit of time. But when we left for the last loop, I was only 15 hours and 56 minutes. So if we ran at 4 hours, I would have been completely fine. But the last 16 miles, I remember when there was like 16 miles left, I was like, uh-oh, every step I take, it feels like something was going to come out. It wasn't my legs. My legs felt the same functionality as I did throughout the last few loops. I obviously was heavier than the beginning of the race, but it wasn't that I couldn't run. But every run, it was like, I don't know, this is gross. It feels like it's going up to your throat. You feel it like sitting here. You're like,
oh no.
Slow down and it goes down. So that's how I was feeling. So I said to Scott, this is bad. I was like nervous now. I knew I was going to finish the race, but like I knew my time was going to start getting away from me. And then he gave me time and then we'll pick it up again. And then I can't go more than like 2 miles by running and be like, I don't know about this. So that's when he's like, hey, and I asked Scott, hey, do you think I can do this in like 22 hours? He said, well, the pace you're moving, well, it'll be 22 and change. And then in the back of my mind, when I said stuff to Scott, I don't know if he figured me out right now. I'm just like trying to see what he's thinking, but I know what I'm trying to think for myself because I also have to be like, reality is reality. And then Scott has an experience, even though you might be delusional to think you can do something, you might not. But I want to hear him out before I make my final decision in my head. And then he's like, well, the pace you're moving, we're looking at like 22 something. And I was like, there's no way I want to do that. I didn't say that to him, but I'm like, nah, I know 20 is starting to slip away, but let's shave an extra hour off of that if I could.
But 22 is the limit.
I don't know what happened. And I just started saying, okay, if I can walk fast, like really fast, as fast as I can, without the bouncing, because when you walk fast, it's not the same thing. I should be able to do it under 22 hours. So that's when I just started. Scott, I don't know if you remember, I was like, hey, I was like, it's going to take 4 hours for this last 16. And Scott was like, no.
No, please no.
The last 10 miles he thought would take 4.
Well, I didn't really think that because I obviously sometimes I say stuff. I don't know if Scott is with me. I'm kind of like trying to like joke within my head. I'm like, oh, you know when you're like, oh, the way I'm moving is going to take like 10 hours. Like,
and then you look for the reaction, like, is it?
It's going to take us 4 hours.
Well, I was telling him, I'm not going to be out here that long.
Yeah, totally.
But I don't know what happened. All I needed to hear, hey, it's one of those things where that I really, I think that I've figured out in my whole life, like, if there's a will, there's a way. It might not be the way that you want, but there's a way. So my only way was now, you have an opportunity, Hellah. You better walk as fast as you ever walk in your life, or you're going to just moan about it and walk slow and then now waste not the goal, not only because goals are always not going to be how you want, but you're going to waste people's time and it's getting late. And then your goal was, let's get here, let's go home and sleep, and then we can come back. So I had a lot of things that I wanted to do. So it could be delayed, but it could be delayed by a lot if you let it get to you. But if you let it get to you and still move with a purpose, and I kept saying to Scott, walk with a purpose, right? Because he always says that. You got to walk with a purpose a lot. And I once in a while, like, yep, walking with purpose. And that's when I just started. I don't know how I was walking like 14-minute mile pace.
Hella's a professional speed walker now. I was like, oh, dang. Hella's like walking. I was like,
I was like, you're running, the more you propel your arm, I was literally leaning forward, just propelling the arm. Just, if you look at me, I can look like one of those, like, in the morning, you see somebody walking, going on their power walk. I was like, and I kept looking at my watch, like, it better not be any slower than 15 miles. So I was like, most of the time, rolling at 14-minute mile pace. And I realized when I was trying to jog, when I want to throw up, I was going 16-minute mile pace, but I was doing a running form, but it was like up and down. So I thought walking at that point was smarter than running.
You know, it's so funny. You get to that point in a 100-miler and you abandon all your dignity, first of all. Like, did you have that like bird's eye perspective of yourself where you're just like, this is not how I visualize looking, you know? And you just sort of have to like accept, like, if I want to do this and like this is how it is. But like, there's also so much like power in just sort of being like, I will do whatever it takes to get here, you know? Like,
you have to have the right people in the corner. Because I was telling Scott, if you weren't there, like Scott was his presence is different in many ways. And I knew, like, having a coach in the past, even playing soccer, coaches are really good in the way where, like, even if you're down, it's not that they need you to convince yourself, but they have these it just works. It's almost like they possess you in a way. Because having him around, even the way he was moving, and he would say to me, okay, Hellah, we're going to move a little slower in this section. Don't worry, though. When we get to this area, we're going to pick it up. So when I hear that, I'm thinking, okay, don't be mad at yourself right now because you're moving slow. Because Scott said when you get to this section, you can pick it up, and we're going to make up the time that we wasted in this side. Mentally, it's a game changer. Because in my mind, I'm like, okay, you're going slow, you don't like it, but there's an opportunity that Scott thinks you can move faster here, and you give yourself a little more grace because you know when you get there, you can make it up. So now when you get up there to that section that he's saying, you're like, you have to prove him right, that he was right, that you can move faster. And I'm like, okay, I'm behind him, like, I got to prove Scott right. Mm-hmm. He said I can move faster, I'm going to be better. And I'm doing everything with my power to let him know, hey, I'm proving you right because what you said was true and you believe that I could do it. I'm going to show you that you were right about it. And it's the right people around you. Because if you don't have that kind of person that can do that, and if you have the person who would let you get away with certain things, it's a complete different game. It really changes. So having him there was, when he was like, he joke with me, obviously Scott isn't full of himself. He's like, hell, I have a good pacing record. Don't screw it up. This guy, he
will not be my DNF.
I told him on the course, this should be your thing, Scott. You should, say, hey, I'm available. This is my price. If you want to like, hit your race goal, I'll do it because the guy is really good at pacing. It's like, and then the crew are amazing, by the way. Lex and our best friend, Julia, like, you're there. And I love how Javelina quarter works because they see me as I'm coming in. So any issue, Lex will be like, Hellah, what do you need? What's happening? I will tell her. By the time I do the lap around to come around, they're already at the tent. And that's ready for me. So the efficiency of in and out, the F1 style was like so quick. It was so quick.
So much fun.
Yeah, so that's the experience. So I dabbled in a lot, yeah.
I'm curious, Scott, from your perspective, because there was a lot of like psychological warfare going on in the background, it sounds like, with your pacing style, especially when you started on lap 4, you're probably thinking, the day's going a certain way, right? And you were pretty much right on track with your goals. And then by lap 5,
it looked like I could have went even under 20.
Yeah. And it's hard not to like kind of get caught up in like almost celebrating too early, like you're doing it, and then when something hits like that late in a race, that's a hard thing to kind of handle and to pivot to. Scott, from your perspective, pacing 40 miles is a fair stretch, right? Like, you're having to take care of yourself. You've been out in the heat all day, 100 degrees back at headquarters. And then you're jumping in and you're sort of seeing Hellah, trying to figure out where he's at. What was your strategy for sort of like you said, pulling him, pushing him, finding the right balance of both those things?
Yeah, no, it's hard. And like most people I've only paced 1 lap at Javelina in the past, but
yeah, 1 lap is good. That's what I like to do. No. Sorry, Hellah.
In some ways, I was kind of joking in my mind. I was telling Hellah, like, I was kind of secretly hoping like Hellah would be like, you know what? I'm good. Just do the last lap. Like, I'll just do number 4. Because he was like in a groove.
You're like, it's my birthday. Come on, man. Like,
I wanted to squat him even if I didn't need him. Just for
hey, I wanted to talking. I wanted to run 40 miles with my bro. Like, I knew it would be a good time, but it is a long stretch. So like mentally too, pacing, and I've done a lot of pacing. I've guided blind individuals for many years now. And there's just a lot. And I've paced for folks at the top, and then I've paced, like Jenny, she was at the cutoff at Bighorn. Like we were like, it was a nail biter to get to like the finish before the final cutoff. And so I've seen the swings, and, quite honestly, like when I settled in with Hellah on his fourth lap, like there's a lot going on. So like what Hellah was talking about, a coach, is I needed to figure out, I saw him and I knew his paces like coming in each lap, and kind of knew, okay, it was the heat and slowing down, and like, what's that going to do for his next 40 miles? So for me, like I'm constantly thinking about, okay, I've got to assess the situation, because I knew Hellah had a certain goal and he was very adamant, like, I really want this. And I knew he wanted it bad. And so what I wanted to do is set him up for that goal if he was able to do it. And I knew he was kind of slowing down. I know Hellah's really tough. I know he loves the heat. I know he says, oh, I never have stomach problems. But I think this is the first 100 miler where he like pushed his body closer to that edge. And it's different than running, say a 27 hour Western States 100, or, even though I know he had some problems in Leadville and Western States, it's different when you go out from the beginning of like, okay, I'm going to go really push my boundary. And so I knew, I was like, well, let's see here, like how are things going to unfold? So that's where the first few miles, like for me, I'm trying to like get a gauge. Because it definitely wasn't celebrating in my mind. I was like, okay, we want to have a cushion for, the fourth lap. But in reality, I'm like, okay, I could tell. I was like, okay, this is going to be tough. And now I got to figure out a way, like, let's set them up for the possibility of getting 21 hours. Or sub 20, but it was going to be tight, because you just know that for me, I know there's going to be a slowdown unless somebody has like an amazing, you just don't run negative splits typically in Hardrock. Not many people do that.
Not after being in the heat all day too.
No,
right?
no, not pushing that hard. So for me, it was like, assess the situation, but also you got to be careful because you don't want to push somebody too hard. So it was like this give and take of like, okay, finding out, where he is. And I'm doing this all in my own head, not telling Hellah, because
you look great. You look so great.
Hellah's just surviving, and like I know he was jazzed, and you can be excited, when you first pick up your pacer and all that, but you really start to find out like, okay, 5 miles in, 6 miles in, what's it going to be like? And Javelina, the loop, and I had forgotten about this, but it's literally kind of uphill the first half and the second half. So the first 10 miles, you do more climbing, and the second half, so it can kind of be demoralizing in stretches there. And that's where Hellah was like, oh no, I'm only going this pace. And so you just give little bite-sized pieces of information to your runner so that, things that they could like absorb and take in, motivation that's going to help them. And then, give them shit when they need it, or, tough love when they need it. And then, encouragement and like put focus. So for me, it's a mixed bag of like what's happening, and sometimes just try to take his mind off things. So it was, it's hard. So for me, I just need to, prepare. And a lot of the time, it's just focusing on the runner, but somehow you need to hydrate. And you also need to stay awake for the whole night.
And you've been up all day. And on the nutrition side, both of you guys are vegan. And so what was the strategy for the fueling side? I guess Hellah mostly, but also you, Scott, because you're out there too. You're still having to cover that distance.
Yeah, I took the advice from Scott, like when it's a heat race, focus on a lot of your liquid calorie and carbs. So we had like a game plan, and the liquid calories that I was doing, I've been practicing with that, training with that a lot. So it wasn't like anything new. And that's a lot. I honestly believe that allowed me to move as fast as I did the first 3 laps. Because I felt, you can feel full, but there's a different being full than having appetite or feeling like, oh, I'm full, but you're not eating enough at the same time. And then I made sure that at every aid station that I was eating some kind of solid, even though most of the time when I'm out on the course, I'm just having the liquid calorie, the gels, and then the carb drink that's caloric mixed with electrolytes. So I was taking some of the things that like I would stuff myself with potato chips, watermelon, and pickles. I was enjoying that, and then I had there's this like what was it? It was something with rice that you picked with me. What was it that we took? It was like the last lap.
Oh, you got some broth. Like it was broth
Yeah,
with rice veggie
there was
broth.
vegan. I love Javelina
Mm.
because they really had it in a way where like people who are plant based or vegan, there's options for you. So you don't
That's
really have
awesome.
to go in there and be like, oh, I don't know if I can have this. That even before the race, we knew that. So mentally, that was good. But I think I did really good on taking everything. And then I think also Scott told me he was thinking about telling me to just let it out, but also he knows the danger of that because
Mm.
once you let it out, you can't even take anything in. So he
In
was
terms of
also,
vomiting.
yeah, vomiting.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
pulling it out. Let's
You're just trying to squish it all back down, right?
if you throw it all up, it could be hard to put it back in. And I can like the last time I threw up was when I went out there delusionally. I'm gonna run 50 miles, and I consumed like 1,200 calories, and I was just throwing up from 11 at night till 4 in the morning. But it was like really bad because once I threw up, I couldn't put anything down. So Scott, when he said that to me, I'm like, I know what you mean by that. So he
Mm.
was like, as much as I wanted to tell you, maybe just do that because maybe you don't feel like something's gonna come up every time you run. You can actually run, but also if you can't take anything in. And he was happy every time. He's like, all right, time to take a gel. And he can hear me. I'm like taking it. You know, you're making that weird. You're like,
You're like, look,
and then he
look.
goes, I'm glad you can still swallow. You're good. Because now you still need that energy throughout your body. Even if you're starting to walk now a lot more than you were, you still need energy to walk, right? So the throw up thing, maybe looking back at it, maybe all the heat stuff like really drained me and it caught up to me at that point. That's the
Yeah.
reality. Even as much as I didn't feel like I got burned by the heat, but it was probably all of that, the residual effect. Now your body couldn't process as much because it really got beat up when it was really hot. People were saying it hit around 100 degrees. So that part was the only issue I had in terms of nutrition. But in terms of eating, and I love eating for 100 miles. I had a bag of mashed potato. I finished it. I took it after the second lap. I was just literally eating it as I'm going. I was running. It wasn't even walking. I had this like
You were
strategy where
sucking down mashed potatoes.
I'm just swallowing it and I'm taking a deep breath and I'm running. So I wanted to eat, but it got to a point where like it was coming up where you're just like, let's just make it to the finish line at this point. And from the goal of running 20 hours or sub 20, I let it go. I wasn't mad about it, but I was so happy because no matter what, it was going to be my fastest 100-mile race. And it was like an hour and 30 something minutes slower with what I went through. Not using as an excuse, but I was happy with what I had to deal with to get that time because even the way I was moving, there was no way I could have made even 22 hours if I didn't have to pick it up toward the end with my speedy walk.
Yeah, so true. I mean,
Yeah,
21:37, you crushed that sub
yeah.
22. You were definitely on a mission there.
Yes. I was thinking about, have you seen one of those Olympic fast walkers, like who can crush a mile like five something? At some point, I was thinking in my head, maybe this is how
New sport, who dis?
I'm still doing a 14-minute mile pace. They're doing like 5-minute mile pace.
Well, I think
I
I
like
even
that.
told Hell, I'm like, they can, race walk at 7-minute pace or something like it's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's crazy.
So I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, you can do a lot. I mean, granted, it's like, rolling and
Yeah.
hilly and that sort of thing, but yeah. And I think that's what is unique about Hell, I would say too, is from a nutrition standpoint, somebody who hasn't done as many ultras or isn't like, I mean, he's done some now, but he really can eat well, which is really
That's a
critical,
skill.
I think. Yeah, because a lot of folks who come from like road backgrounds or they're fairly new to ultras, they just don't get enough in, regardless of what type of, if it's solid and if it's just all liquid, like whatever, they're just not getting enough carbohydrate typically. So the good thing about Hella is like, yeah, he can eat while he's running, while he's moving. But I think he just got that. And it's hard to say, like when you do, I was joking with Hella, just trying to make light of the situation. Because when you're miserable, I've been there so many times where your stomach, but I was like, I used to have buddies being like, oh yeah, just puke while you run. Like, don't stop.
Just like gush it
That's
out.
wonderful.
Like
That's
sometimes
Scott's
I would
back.
feel better, like at Western States, everyone assumed that I ran from start to finish without any issues. But, I've been there where I like literally just puking and then go back to 8-minute pace, sub 8-minute pace. So, sometimes you can feel better and then you can get your stomach to digest and keep things down. But I've seen a lot of people where they don't, and it gets really ugly. So the fact that Hella was still able to eat and drink and get electrolytes in, get water in, even though you're not moving fast, it just helps with, brain energy and the nervous system. And there's just so many components there. So yeah, I don't know. It is one of those things like, okay, what if you had like vomited, like cleaned everything
Mhm.
out, right?
Yeah.
Started fresh. Maybe you would have like felt way better and moved, but you just
But you
never
never know.
know.
You
And
don't
then it
want to
can
take the
go.
risk, I guess, that
Yeah, you can always go the other way though too.
Yeah,
So
it could always get worse, but it might get better.
yeah, but I think that's key. And because I was out there longer, I ate a lot of solid food later. I was grabbing all these. They had like Javelina is really deluxe, like Jamil and the whole Ayurveda runners. They do an amazing job there. But yeah, they had these bean burrito rolls, and like most of the time, vegan you can eat at most aid stations, but like Hellah said, sometimes the broth or
Yeah.
when you're in these remote areas, like they don't have all the options. Whereas Javelina is like deluxe.
They
so
really did
as a
good job.
runner, I knew, okay, I can get enough food, but a lot of times I would only have time just mentally to like get down gels because I'm trying to make sure Hellah's eating and drinking and doing
Totally.
all of that, plus being the mental coach and, side of things. So you're managing a lot, plus being out there longer. That's why I joke with Hellah being like, I only plan on, I stop at this time, or like, I'm trying to just motivate. I'm like,
I'm on overtime now.
I'm not taking 4 hours to do the last 10 miles.
One other thing, we're like, we want to sleep because I've never had a 200-mile race prior to this. I've never had a race where like I got to sleep through the night. Like, and I was like, I want to get back 2 a.m. so we can sleep and then wake up. That was like also motivated in the back of my mind. So you don't have to go through a second, like another night again to wake up to finish that day. Like, so when I hear him, so I'm like, yeah, the goal is I want to sleep. And I get there to the finish line, and we sat down. Everything was good. We're laughing. We're like, okay, we did it. Time to go. And I stood up. Lex was about to walk me to the car. I was about to throw up on her. I was like, wait a minute, stop. She's like, what's going on? I was like, I'm about to puke. I need to sit down. He went to sit me down, and I started feeling, I was like, I got to lay down. And the next thing you know, Scott and I were stuck at the headquarters. He's sleeping on the chair. Like, I don't know how he fell asleep on the chair. And I'm laying down, like, try not to throw up. And I'm like, the whole time what I keep saying is, I just wanted us to get to the Airbnb. The goal was so we can have a good night's sleep in bed. That was the goal. And we didn't get out of there till close to 5 in the morning. I'm like, dang it, I finished at 3. We didn't get out there, leave till another 2 hours later. That's how
your body was like, no, we did the job, man.
Coming up. And the funny thing is, someone told us at an aid station that you should put rubbing alcohol. So I'm like, I didn't relay the message to Scott really well. And he's like, I'm about to throw up. I'm sitting down. And he's like, you should put alcohol like on your nose. And then I was like, Scott, this guy said I need alcohol. So Scott is like, hand sanitizer, I have alcohol. He's thinking I need something because I just went to the bathroom.
Oh my God.
Scott comes to me with hand sanitizer because it has alcohol in it. And I'm well, he's saying like, I have to put alcohol in my nose to prevent myself from throwing up. I just looked at this guy. I'm like, he's crazy.
He's on glue.
But guess what? We get to the headquarters. So my friend Julia is a nurse. She's like so good with stuff. So she's trying to figure out what to get into like anti-nausea medicines and things like that. And then she's like, wait, let me see if they have alcohol pad. And then she came in with it. And she's like, put this around your nose and stuff. And I was like, somebody told us that at an aid station. I guess that's what he was talking about. As soon as I did that, within minutes, I stood up. I'm like, I don't feel like I need to throw up.
No way.
Yeah, because everything I was smelling and things like that, it's like you want to throw up. It helped. And then that's how I was able to walk to the car so we can go home to the Airbnb. It was crazy.
That is a solid hack.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've never heard of that. And I've been ultra running for 30 years now, close to, and been around like aid stations, volunteering, working at many ultras. I'd never heard. So yeah, evidently like rubbing alcohol and like those alcohol wipes, like you can put them in your nose, like just roll them up.
Just smelling it in, taking it in. And you can feel when you're inhaling it, hitting your lungs, there's something like, it's almost like relieving like that. It's like something stuck in your chest. It's like relieving everything.
That's an interesting one. That's worth carrying like a rubbing alcohol wipe or something like that. Like just in case it happens to work, right?
And toilet paper too, because I never thought I would ever have to do that.
And toilet paper.
Hellah for sure. He's just like, I never go to the bathroom. And
I was like, no, there's no chance.
I think he went, like, 3 times when we were out there?
I'm like, what the heck is going on with me? This is not right. And it was like, you have no power because you can't control.
Yeah.
You just like, and Scott's so funny. We had a good laugh at it. He's like, hey, you can just go to the side. You can use a piece of rock. I was like, Scott, you want me to die? I was
convincing him to wipe with rocks. I'm like, hey,
don't sit in a cactus.
Just go. Like,
a rock. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm holding it if I have to. So, but we had to come with it. He was like, we're talking about all these things. And I was like, maybe if there's a leaves or something. So
I'm like, there's no leaves in the desert. I'm like,
there's
maybe some.
So maybe a cactus. It
wasn't like, I was like, my body was in misery, but it wasn't like miserable, like moping. It was like, we're like having fun with it. He's telling me, rocking the sky, I'll cut myself trying to use a rock. And then these things, we're asking people. There's no embarrassment now if you gotta go. I see some ladies. I'm like, hey, do you happen to have any way? And
We're
then
trying
one
to
of them
bum
goes, I'm
off
so
like toilet
sorry,
paper
I
on
don't.
anybody.
And then,
You're like a buff, like
yeah,
socks.
one
I
person
told Hellah
did.
he could use.
Yeah,
It's been done before.
I was like, and I was like, Scott, if I do that, I'd have to throw it away, and we can't do that on the trail. I can't just throw my thing away because it's not biodegradable. He's like, no, you take it with you. I was like, no, I
Oh
can't.
no.
I just roll it
That'll
up.
really be
Good.
nauseous.
Come on. It's like I've had kids. Like I've had to change dirty
But
diapers. I'm like,
I don't know
okay.
if this lady
Yeah.
will listen to your podcast, but shout out to this lady on the course. She was struggling too, and I was sad to ask her for a favor when she was struggling. But she was like, "Yeah, I have toilet paper." She gave me a bunch, and I took it, stuff in my hand, in my pocket. But of course, when that happened, I didn't have to go. Like it just changed a little bit until I got closer to headquarters. I'm like, okay, I got to go to that porta potty now. What a time!
Oh
But
my
knowing that
gosh.
that was on me was like really like a safe haven. Like in my head, I'm like, okay, worst case scenario, you have something you can use.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, now my next 100-mile race that I do in the future, I'm gonna have like toilet paper check, put that in the pocket.
I mean, I think that's Billy's thing. He always has, like, every time I wash his running shorts, there's like bits of toilet paper that come out into the dryer because, like, he puts it in all the back pockets of his shorts. And I think his theory is just like, if you have it, then you won't use it, right? Like, so now that's got to be part of your repertoire. Now I feel like that's also like a rite of passage for 100-milers, like the fact you made it to your third one without having that lovely experience. I think
I
it's
was
part of it.
My body's burning it probably, and I'm sweating it out because I never had the urge. Like it never crossed my mind. And the amount of food that I would eat, too, like you would think that I'd have to go. But I did tell Scott I have a weird thing. This might be too much information, but I can go 2 days without going to the bathroom, Hilary. I pee.
That is weird.
And I thought it was funny, but I did ask my two siblings, my sister and brother. They're the same thing, so I think maybe it is genetic for us. And then I made my sister ask my brother-in-law, who's also from Mali. I'm like, maybe it's a Malian thing. And then she goes, "Oh God, he goes like 3 times a day." Okay, maybe it's just our family.
Like Javelina every day.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. But I was like, Hellah, like you don't want to like shit your pants. Just like go. Like just use a rock, whatever, like,
This is not the New York City Marathon. You don't have to do
like,
that.
Yeah.
So I could never find, like Hellah was like, oh man, I really gotta go. Like he would have to start walking. I was like, let's go. Let's just find them. Like, we'll find the soft, like smoothest rocks, which are not smooth.
It's the smoothest rock.
So you're just walking through the desert, staring at rocks, being like, "That's a good rock. Ooh, that's an even smoother rock, right?"
Light lightly, Hellah, just like whatever. Then we'll get to the aid station. But like, yeah, why are you going to be miserable for the next 3 months?
I was the bougie guy on the trail. I was like, nope, Scott, I need a toilet paper. I don't care about going outside.
I need the Charmin.
I've done it back in Mali, but like, I don't need a porta potty, but I needed something else. I couldn't do a rock because next thing you know,
see, Hellah, you just need more experience. You just need like
Yeah.
you need to practice this. You just need to go so you're used to it. Like, yeah.
More shitty experiences.
It was a lot of fun though, overall. Like looking back at everything, I had a really good time. That place was fun. When you get into, you can see headquarters like far out. You can see the light at night and the music. You're like, okay, I'm getting to my people now. Like I'm getting
It
to.
pulls you in, right?
And Julia.
It pulls you in, or it can kind of mentally, because Hellah would be like, how far do you think it is? Like I would be doing the math, like looking like, okay, we have this much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's kind of demoralizing too. And you're like, well, we're 3 miles from the aid station. You can see it out. And
You
like
see
the
it.
aid station.
It looks like it's not 3,
I
but it's
remember
like out
this,
there.
like pacing before. Like,
Yes.
Totally. Yeah. No, it's a tough race. It's deceptively tough. And I feel like 5 loops of any course like that too. Like, yeah, that's not an easy one to execute. Okay, I want to do a couple like rapid fire questions just to close things out. And I know, Hellah, you mentioned the instant mashed potatoes were one of your, like, that was a go-to during the race. For me, that's like my ultimate, like, if I can't get anything else down, like instant mashed potatoes is like a huge one. Scott, do you have like this is the food, if nothing else is going in, like I can always get this in? What's your kind of go-to?
I mean, I hate to say it, but like gels, just because they're easy for everyone. And I know everyone's like, that's not a gel.
Yeah.
Like, when push comes to shove, like you need the carbohydrate, and sometimes getting volume down through a drink. And even with the, all the new fancy, dextrin drinks, dextrose, try to combine it into a format where like, oh, you can get this many calories of carb and this many grams of carb. But I think just gels are tried and true. And I hate to sound like boring, but when things go down the wire, I just always plan on, I'm just going to go straight on gels late in the race. So as much as people will be like, oh, I can't gag another gel, you just have to. Like,
Yeah.
I hate to say, but I've done things too where I've done sometimes concentrated nectar. So any kind of concentrated like sugar, carbohydrate drink could work, but sometimes the volume, you just can't get it down. So I don't know. I think when push comes to shove, there's
bang
gels
for
as
buck,
much as
right?
people get sick of eating them. I just tell people like, oh, I'm so sick. I'm like, well, what else are you going to eat? Like, you're not going to chow down on a burrito. Like, I love solid food and, sometimes potatoes, but sometimes that can get too dry, even mashed potatoes, like just like liquid format, and gels are great, especially nowadays too, with the hydrogels. Like I think it's a mental thing. Like, and even Hellah, like he got good at it. He's just like, I can't eat anymore. I'm like, you just got to do it. Like down to
You just
one.
have to. Yeah. You're right.
You do, especially when you're desperate. When you see your time slipping away, when you become desperate, even I never knew I could walk that fast till I was desperate. I really never did, and I'm like, one day we were walking. Lex is dropping me on a walk because she walks quicker than me when I'm walking. And I'm trying to power walk. I'm like, wow, how the heck did I get a 14-minute split? Because I was desperate. That's what it is. When you're desperate, you will pick anything that you need. And for the mashed potato, I got spoiled. So the last 200-mile race, Lex would make me the mashed potato ahead of time with vegan butter. And then this sounds like, let's just get an instant one so you don't have to do, because it's going to work. But the thing that she does with it that makes it nice and easy, so she'll put it in a Ziploc and then put it, like, it has to be cold, especially when you're waiting all day. So it'll be in like a cooler. But when you get it, it's almost like, not ice, but it had this cool thing on it for a Javelina where it felt like I was eating something cool. I can feel it come down my throat. Like, it's making me cool, and I'm also enjoying this soft texture. So it wasn't like hard as a rock. But at that point, when I was doing it onto my second and third loop, it wasn't as bad if it was probably maybe the fourth or fifth loop. So that's when like the gel thing, which I like my gel. So when Scott was like, take the gel, so I'd be like, yep, let's just try the gel. And it'd be like, drink some water. I know your gel is not as thick as you think, but drink some water, just wash it down, and I'll take some water. But the tough part is when you're trying to take something in, it's trying to come up, but you just have to like almost hold your breath to get it to swallow down. And then that's when I make that weird sound. I don't know if I was behind Sky, so I like, hey, let's stop already, because you're gonna make me puke. Every time it's like, okay, I'm good. Let's go now.
I'm just immune to it. I've I've felt it.
Like, he's fine.
Seen it. Yeah, doing it all the time. But I mean, if I were to do solids, a lot of times like onigiri, like rice balls, sushi rice balls that are just,
I love rice balls.
Yeah, they work well too. But again, when you get towards the end of the race, so that's why, as boring as it is, I think, gels are the way to go, or some kind of concentrated drink. But it's it's a tricky thing. And that's where, like with Hellah, with the alcohol, wipes, or the, like, I don't know, like maybe that'll take away the nausea, like sensations, but does it correct things that are going on with dehydration? No. So like that's where people have to get their stomach back in working order. So whether you vomit, whether you mask it, or try to like take it away with I've never heard before, but because it's kind of a cool hack. But then trying to right the ship and figure out what's going on and get things back in order, because sometimes those things will only work for so long if you're not able to get the fluids back up, the electrolytes, and the carbohydrate coming in.
The beauty of 100 miles is that you do have that time to problem solve, right? Like, it's so easy to get into that mindset of just like, oh, everything fell apart, like it's a mess, like, but if you can kind of stay in that zone where you're going to do anything, you're going to do whatever it takes to turn it around and keep going. I feel like that's like the biggest mental thing you can lock into, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. What's your guys' favorite running song? What's your theme song?
Ooh. Scott, you go first. I need to think. Good one.
Put you on the spot here.
I don't know. I'll say genre, because it doesn't matter what. It doesn't need to be one song, but I don't know. Rage Against the Machine. I don't know. I run on Rage a lot of times, like at moments when I'm like just trying to just get through. So I feel like I'll go that route. Just really
little headbang down the trail, like
just heavy stuff that's got a little bit of a. It's got a little bit of a hip hop beat to it, or like, I don't know. Yeah. That and, trap rap is usually where I'll go.
Rap will get you. Any rap song will get you hyped. Like, especially when you put on like an Eminem one. When you hear, oh my gosh, like your blood is. I love Till I Collapse by Eminem, because I've got to a point like, till I collapse. I'm not stopping till I collapse. But one of the songs that hit my heart since last year, and I have it like on my playlist, like 3 different things when I'm out there training. But like after my Boston Marathon race, this is the first time I prepped for a marathon last year. So Lex did a whole YouTube video, and then she found this song. It's called "Run This City." It's by L8LI. So it's called "Run This City," and she put on my video in a slow mo, and it gave me this chill that I couldn't take out. So when I hear this song, it brings me back like to that day. And then we did it again for my marathon this year for Rotterdam, and I have it in my playlist. So literally how the song is like, it literally talking about break by break. I'm laying this down. We run this city and we run this town. So that song is like a mellow, like smooth song. It's nothing that's like crazy hype, but the lyrics and the way that the chorus goes in the music, it gives me this like, it makes me feel like a new person. When I hear that thing, I just want to keep running. And the way it's talking about like just basically it's brick by brick. And it's been my theme run song the last year into this year. It's called "Run This City."
I love that. I feel like it's sort of like the contrast of ultra running is that you can have the, like, I just want to be in the zone. I want to have the Eminem. I want to have the Rage Against the Machine and just be like in it. Or it can be so introspective and so quiet. And you can, like you could be so in the moment of like hearing what's around you. And you can have that whole experience in the same race, which is a powerful metaphor.
Yeah, you might need something different. I used to do like chanting Krishna Das. Like, Sigur Rós, like just like something like.
Oh, Sigur Rós. Yeah, you get in a zone.
Off. But yeah, it just depends on the mood. I feel like what you need. But
yeah. It's very cool. Mine is Queen, Don't Stop Me Now. So if you ever see me air drumming down the trail, we're having such a good time even when we're not.
Great.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's cool. Well, on that note, thank you guys so much for your time today. This was so much fun. Just love chatting with both of you and appreciate all of your experiences and perspectives on trail running, on life. So yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us. And guys, go if you want a good pacer,
Yeah, apparently Scott's got the Pacer Award of the year.
Hellah,
thanks for dragging me out there for 40 miles in the desert, Hellah. Like
on your birthday too.
On his birthday. Oh yeah, we didn't mention on his birthday, guys. Come on, that's some selfish stuff.
That was
so thank you for
heck
that.
of a way to celebrate.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny. On my birthday, he texted me. He said, "I need a pace for 40 miles."
Yeah, you want to come out today?
There's fair.
I'm flying out, Scott. I'll see you in a few hours.
Yes, there you go, Scott. You need a big adventure so you can collect on that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
got it.
I'll cash in on it.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Trail Network podcast. We hope you got as much out of it as we did. This was a ton of fun. I know I personally learned a lot, and I have so much respect for both Hellah and Scott, so it was a real treat to have them on the podcast. Please feel free to leave us a comment on Spotify or on our Instagram at the Trail Network Pod, and let us know what you thought of the episode. And also, if you have any suggestions for who we should have on next, we are all ears. Until next time, I'm Hilary Yang. It's been a slice.